I wish you had never been my father. You're useless. All you do is pressure me." These were the last words my son said to me before he hung up the phone. And I assure you, what I did after hearing those words changed our lives forever. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell because we have new stories every day. Leave a like and tell us in the comments which city you're watching from. My name is David Miller. I'm 65 years old, and for the last 3 years, I've lived through the most painful experience a father can face. Raising a son alone after losing the love of my life. Sarah, my wife, passed away from cancer in March of 2021, leaving me not only with an emptiness in my chest, but also with the full responsibility of guiding our only son, Daniel, who was then 21 and in his second year of business administration. That Tuesday in September 2024, I decided to call Daniel, just as I did every week. It was my routine since Sarah died, to check on his studies, ask if he needed anything, to maintain that father-son connection that I felt was becoming more fragile every day. I dialed his number while making my afternoon coffee, expecting a normal conversation, maybe to hear about his classes or his plans for the weekend. "Hey, son," I said when he answered. "How's everything at the university? It's already September, and I wanted to know how this final semester is going for you." There was an awkward pause on the other end of the line. Daniel took a moment to respond, and when he did, his voice sounded tense, annoyed. "Everything's fine, Dad, normal." Something in his tone alerted me. Over these years, I had learned to read between the lines, to detect when my son wasn't telling me the whole truth. It was a skill I developed after becoming a single father, when I realized I had to be both father and mother to Daniel. "Are you sure? You sound a little, I don't know, different. Are your classes going well? Your grades?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Look, Dad, I don't have time for an interrogation. I'm busy." "Daniel, it's not an interrogation. I'm just worried about you. You know your education is important to me, especially after everything we've been through together since your mother." "Oh, please!" he interrupted me sharply. "Always the same thing, mom this, mom that. It's been 3 years, Dad." His words hit me like a slap in the face. He had never spoken about Sarah like that. He had never shown such disrespect for her memory. I felt something break inside my chest, but I kept my cool. "Son, I just want to know how your studies are going. It's a simple question." "Fine, I told you they're fine. Can we end this conversation now?" "Daniel, please, I can tell something's not right. If there's a problem, we can solve it together. It's always been that way between us." It was then that I heard a deep sigh, followed by a silence that chilled my blood. When he spoke again, his voice had a coldness I had never heard before. "You want to know the truth? The truth is I failed 3 classes. 3! And I have to take them again, which means my graduation is going to be delayed a whole year. Are you happy now?" My world came crashing down. 3 failed classes meant that all my sacrifices, all the money invested in his education, the apartment I bought him near the university so he wouldn't have to waste time commuting, the car I made available to him, all of it had been for nothing. "Daniel, this is serious. We need to talk about what went wrong, how we can." "No!" he yelled at me. "We're not going to talk about anything. I'm sick of your lectures, of your constant pressure, of you always controlling me. Son, calm down. I'm not controlling you. I'm just worried about your future, after everything we've invested in your education." "Invested?" "Invested." His voice cracked with a mix of rage and sarcasm. "It's always about money with you. You're always reminding me of everything you've spent on me." "Daniel, that's not true, and you know it. Every dollar I've invested in you has been with love, to give you the best opportunities." And that's when he uttered those words that changed everything between us forever. "I wish you had never been my father. Useless. All you know is how to pressure me and make me feel guilty. I wish Mom were still alive so I wouldn't have to put up with you alone." The silence that followed was deafening. I felt as if a dagger had been plunged into my heart and slowly twisted. The words echoed in my head over and over. My own son, the boy I had raised with so much love, especially during these 3 difficult years without Sarah, had just told me he wished I had never been his father. Without another word, I hung up the phone. I sat there in my armchair, the phone still in my hand, trying to process what I had just heard. In that moment, I made the decision that would change our lives forever. The hours following that call were the hardest I had experienced since Sarah's funeral. I remained motionless in my favorite armchair, the one where my wife and I used to sit and plan our family's future, watching the afternoon shadows stretch across the floor of my empty house. My hands trembled as I held a photograph of Daniel graduating from high school. In that picture, he was hugging me with a huge smile, his eyes shining with pride and gratitude. It was June of 2018, just 2 years before Sarah got sick. I remembered that day perfectly. I had cried with emotion when my son walked across the stage to receive his diploma, and he had run directly to me to give me the most sincere hug of his life. "Thanks for everything, Dad. Without you and Mom, none of this would have been possible," he had whispered in my ear that day. What had happened to that grateful young man? When had he transformed into someone capable of saying such cruel words? My mind began to review the last 3 years in painful detail. When Sarah was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in January 2021, our world fell apart. Daniel was 21 and in his second year of college. The doctors told us she had between 6 months and a year to live, and we decided he shouldn't interrupt his studies for his mother's illness. During those devastating months, as Sarah grew weaker day by day, I became a nurse, chauffeur, cook, and counselor. I took my wife to chemotherapy, managed her medications, comforted her during nights of unbearable pain, and at the same time, I tried to keep Daniel focused on his studies. I sent him extra money so he wouldn't have to work and could concentrate solely on the university. When Sarah died in March 2021, Daniel came home for 2 weeks for the funeral and the initial grieving. I remember him crying in my arms, promising me that we would get through this together, that he would be the best student possible to honor his mother's memory. "Dad, I know everything depends on you now. I won't let you down. I'm going to graduate with the best grades, so Mom will be proud wherever she is," he had told me as he packed his things to go back to the university. Fulfilling that implicit promise to support him, I sold Sarah's car and used those funds, along with a considerable portion of my retirement savings, to buy him a 2-bedroom apartment near the university campus. It cost $150,000, but I knew it was an investment in his future. I explained that I would keep the property in my name for legal and tax reasons, but that the apartment was entirely his as long as he was studying. 6 months later, I noticed he was spending a lot on transportation and decided to buy him a used but reliable car. It was a 2019 Toyota Corolla, which I found in excellent condition for $15,000. Again, I registered it in my name following the advice of my lawyer, Michael, but Daniel had full use of the vehicle. During 2022 and 2023, our weekly phone calls had been cordial but superficial. Daniel would tell me about his classes, his friends, his weekend plans. I sent him money every month for food, utilities, and entertainment expenses. He never complained, never asked for more than necessary, and his grades, according to him, were good. However, reviewing these memories with the painful clarity that betrayal brings, I began to notice signs I had ignored. In the last 6 months, Daniel had been more distant in our calls. His answers had become shorter, less detailed. When I asked him about specific subjects, he would change the topic to social activities or minor problems with the apartment. I remembered a conversation in May where he casually mentioned having trouble with a corporate finance professor but didn't want to give details. In June, when I asked about his semester grades, he told me they hadn't posted all the scores yet. In July, he avoided the academic topic altogether and talked only about a vacation he had taken with friends to the coast. My stomach clenched as I realized he had probably been lying to me for months. The failed subjects were not a recent thing. He had likely been struggling academically since the previous semester, maybe even since last year. I got up from the armchair and walked to my study, where I kept all the family's important documents. I opened the file cabinet and took out the deed to Daniel's apartment and the car's title. There they were, clearly registered in my name, David Miller, legal owner of both assets. At that moment, a mixture of pain and determination began to grow in my chest. My son had not only lied to me about his academic performance for months, but he had capped off his deceit with the most hurtful words a son can say to his father. He had wished I had never existed in his life, after all the sacrifices I had made for him, especially during the toughest years after losing Sarah. I looked at the clock. It was 7:30 the evening. Exactly 5 hours had passed since that devastating call. During those 5 hours, I had relived every moment of sacrifice, every dollar invested in his future, every night I had stayed awake worrying about his well-being, while he built a comfortable life with my money and, apparently, mocked my efforts behind my back. I picked up my cell phone and looked for the contact of Michael Davis, my trusted lawyer for 15 years. It was late, but I knew he would understand the urgency of what I was about to ask. Before dialing, I took a deep breath and made the most difficult decision of my life as a father. It was time for Daniel to learn the true value of things and the real weight of the words we speak when we hurt those who love us unconditionally. With fingers still trembling with indignation, I dialed Michael's number. The phone rang 3 times before I heard his familiar voice. "David, good evening. How are you? It's a bit late to call. Has something urgent happened?" Michael Davis had been our family lawyer since 2009. He had handled the purchase of our house, Sarah's will, and was the one who advised me to keep Daniel's properties registered in my name for legal and financial protection. He was a meticulous man, my age, who understood the value of well-thought-out decisions. "Michael, I need you to start the process tomorrow morning to sell the apartment on the north side and the Toyota Corolla, which are registered in my name. My son uses both, but legally they are mine." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could imagine Michael adjusting his glasses, as he always did when processing important information. "David, that's a pretty drastic decision. Did something happen with Daniel? The last time we spoke, you told me everything was going well with his studies." My son's words echoed in my mind again. "I wish you had never been my father." Useless. I felt a pang of pain in my chest, but also a steely determination I hadn't felt in years. "Michael, my son just told me he wishes I had never been his father, after everything I've sacrificed for him, especially these 3 years since Sarah died. He failed 3 classes and has been lying to me for months. But what I can't forgive are the words he said to me 5 hours ago. I understand your pain, David, but selling those properties is irreversible. Don't you think you should think about it for a few days? Emotions are running high right now. I've had 5 hours to think about it, and my decision is made. I want Daniel to learn a lesson he will never forget about respect and consequences. Those properties were bought with my retirement savings and the money from Sarah's car. If he wishes he never had a father like me, then he can live as if that were true." Michael sighed deeply. He knew my character well enough to know that when I made a decision with this firmness, there was no turning back. "All right, David, I'll help you, but I want you to understand the implications. The apartment is in a highly sought-after area. We'll probably sell it quickly, maybe in 2 or 3 weeks. The car will be easier, maybe a week. Once we start the process, it will be very difficult to reverse it. That's exactly what I want. No reversals, no cheap second chances. My son needs to understand that words have weight, especially when you direct them at the person who gave you life and has sacrificed everything for you. And what do you plan to do about his housing? You can't just leave him on the street, David." That question made me pause for a moment. Despite my pain and my determination to teach him a lesson, he was still my son. It wasn't my intention to completely destroy him, but to show him the real value of the things he had been taking for granted. Look for options for small houses for rent in areas farther from the university. Something basic, no frills. If he shows that he's learned his lesson and truly changes his attitude, I might consider helping him with rent for a limited time, but he'll have to earn it. Understood. Tomorrow morning, I'll start with the appraisals of both properties. Do you want me to handle everything discreetly, or would you prefer Daniel to know what's happening immediately? I want it to be a complete surprise. I want him to feel the same unpleasant surprise I felt when he said those cruel words to me. For years, I've been a predictable father, always there to rescue him, to give him everything he needed. It's time he learned that actions have real consequences. David, as your lawyer, I have to ask, are you emotionally prepared for the repercussions of this decision? Daniel is going to react very badly when he finds out. Michael's question made me pause. I closed my eyes and heard my son's voice again. "I wish you had never been my father." Useless. I felt that stab in my heart again, but also a mental clarity I hadn't experienced in a long time. "Michael, for 3 years I've been a father and a mother to that boy. I've sacrificed my comfort, my savings, my plans for a quiet retirement, all to make sure he had the best opportunities after losing his mother. And today he told me he wishes I had never existed in his life. If those are his true feelings, then it's time for him to experience what his life would be like without my support. I understand your position. In the next few days I'll have all the documents ready. I suggest you document this conversation and your reasons, just in case we need to legally justify your decisions later." "Perfect. One more thing, Michael. I want you to look for information on rental houses in neighborhoods like the South Side or similar areas. Nothing fancy, but decent. If Daniel shows genuine remorse and a real change in attitude, I'll consider helping him with basic housing for 6 months, maximum. Understood. Anything else you need me to handle?" "Not for now. I'll expect your call tomorrow with the progress of the appraisals. After hanging up, I went to the kitchen to make a cup of tea. My hands were no longer trembling. The decision was made, and for the first time in hours, I felt a strange sense of peace mixed with deep sadness. While waiting for the water to boil, I reviewed the property documents again. $150,000 for the apartment, $15,000 for the car, $165,000 that I had invested in giving my son comfort and opportunities, money that came from decades of honest work and the sacrifice of selling the last tangible memory of Sarah. My phone vibrated with a text message. It was from Daniel. Dad, sorry for hanging up like that. Was stressed about exams. Talk tomorrow. I read the message 3 times. It was typical of him. A superficial apology that didn't address the gravity of his words, sent hours later when he probably realized he had gone too far. But it was too late. The legal machinery was in motion. I didn't reply to the message. Tomorrow, Michael would start the appraisals. In a week, 2 at most, my son would discover that words have real consequences, and that the father he had so cruelly insulted was the same one who had provided him with everything he had. It was time for Daniel to learn to value what it truly means to have a father who loves you, even when that love requires difficult decisions. The following days passed in a strange routine of apparent normalcy mixed with a silent determination growing inside me. Every morning I had breakfast while Michael sent me updates via text message. Appraiser will visit the apartment tomorrow. 3 interested buyers already. The Corolla will be appraised this afternoon. However, there was something I needed to confirm before the process moved forward completely. I needed to better understand my son's real situation, beyond the academic lies I had uncovered. So, on Friday afternoon, I decided to call Miguel, my lifelong friend and practically the only confidant I had since Sarah's death. Miguel and I had known each other since college. We had been best men at each other's weddings, and he had been a fundamental support during Sarah's illness. Most importantly, his son, Alex, studied at the same university as Daniel, although in a different major, and they occasionally ran into each other at student social events. Miguel, I need to ask you a delicate favor, I said when he answered my call. Of course, David. What do you need? Could you ask Alex what he knows about Daniel's university life, his activities, who he hangs out with, how he manages his money? But please be discreet about it. Miguel knew my character well enough to sense that something serious was going on. Has something serious happened with Daniel? I briefly told him about the call on Tuesday, omitting the details about the sales I had initiated. Miguel listened in silence, and when I finished, he sighed deeply. David, I'm so sorry you went through that. A son's words can be more painful than anything else. Let me talk to Alex tonight, and I'll call you tomorrow. I barely slept that night. My mind oscillated between sadness over Daniel's cruel words and anxiety about learning more details of his real life. What else had he been hiding from me? The parties, the nights out, the excessive spending. Were they the reason for his academic problems? On Saturday morning, Miguel called me early. David, I spoke with Alex last night. What I'm about to tell you, you're not going to like. My stomach tightened. Tell me everything, Miguel. I need to know the whole truth. According to Alex, Daniel has been living a pretty carefree life for the past year. He goes out partying 3 or 4 nights a week, frequents expensive restaurants, constantly buys designer clothes. Alex says he's always bragging about the apartment his dad bought him and the car he drives. Every word was like a hammer blow to my chest. What else? Apparently, he's been telling several classmates that you're very easy to handle and that you always send him money without asking many questions. Alex remembered a specific conversation where Daniel said, quote, My dad is so naive. He thinks I'm the perfect student and gives me everything I want. The pain instantly transformed into a cold, calculated anger. Not only had he been wasting the money I religiously sent him every month, but he was also mocking me to his friends, seeing me as an easy-to-manipulate fool. Is there more? Alex mentioned that Daniel works part-time at an electronics store in a high-end mall downtown, but according to him, he does it more for kicks than out of necessity. He says he makes about $1,200 a month but spends much more than that on entertainment and luxuries. The information confirmed my most painful suspicions. Daniel had not only been lying to me about his grades, but he had built a whole false image of himself, financed with my money and my blind trust. Miguel, does Alex know anything specific about the academic problems? Yes, and this is the most serious part. Alex says that Daniel mentioned several months ago that he had failed a few classes last semester, but that it wasn't a big deal because, anyway, my dad never finds out the real grades, and there's always a way to fix things. Those last words were devastating. My son had not only been failing academically for months, but he had deliberately calculated to keep me in the dark, knowing I would continue to fund his irresponsible lifestyle. One more thing, David. Alex mentioned that about 2 weeks ago, Daniel was bragging at a social gathering about an expensive trip he was planning to take to Miami Beach next month with a group of friends. Apparently, he had already booked a 5-star hotel. A trip to Miami Beach, a 5-star hotel, with the money I sent him monthly for basic food and study expenses. My son had turned my fatherly generosity into his personal entertainment fund. After hanging up with Miguel, I sat on my patio, looking at the garden Sarah had cultivated with so much love. Her roses still bloomed every spring and always reminded me of her philosophy on life. David, true love sometimes requires tough decisions, especially when you're raising a son. At that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that my decision had been correct. It wasn't about revenge, but about educational justice. Daniel had abused my trust, squandered resources that came from decades of honest work, and had capped off his irresponsible behavior by insulting me in the most hurtful way possible. My phone rang. It was Michael. David, I have excellent news about the sales. The apartment already has 2 firm offers, one for $152,000, another for $150,500. The Toyota has an interested buyer at $16,000. We could close both transactions next week. Perfect, Michael. Accept the highest offer for the apartment and proceed with the sale of the car. Are you absolutely sure, David? Once we sign, there's no going back. I thought about Miguel's words. My dad is so naive. There's always a way to fix things. Very easy to handle. I thought about the 5-star trip financed with my money. I thought about the cruel words. I wish you had never been my father. Useless. I'm absolutely sure, Michael. My son needs to learn that actions have real consequences, and that respect is not optional in a family relationship. That afternoon, while organizing some documents in my study, I found a letter Daniel had written to me from the university in 2022, shortly after the first anniversary of Sarah's death. It said, "Dad, I can never thank you enough for everything you've done for me. I promise to make you proud and honor Mom's memory with my academic achievements." I put the letter in the same drawer where the deeds that would no longer belong to him were kept. In a week, maybe less, my son would discover that the naive, easy-to-handle father had made the most difficult decision of his paternal life. The second week of October passed with an efficiency that surprised even me. Michael had shown why he was considered one of the best real estate lawyers in Chicago. Every day I received precise updates on the progress of both sales, and each update confirmed that my decision was inexorably materializing. On Monday, he informed me that the Rodriguez family had increased their offer for the apartment to $153,000. They were a young couple with 2 small children, both professionals, who needed to move closer to their jobs on the north side of the city. Ironically, they were looking for exactly what Daniel had: a comfortable, well-located space, perfect for starting a new stage of life. On Wednesday, the Toyota Corolla was sold to an Uber driver who had been saving for years to buy his own vehicle. $16,000, paid in cash. The man, about 40 years old, thanked me multiple times during the signing of the papers, explaining that this car represented his definitive economic independence. It pained me internally to think about how Daniel had taken for granted the same vehicle that, for another man, meant the dream of a lifetime. During those days, I implemented a discreet observation strategy that allowed me to confirm my worst suspicions about my son's lifestyle. I created a fake Instagram account with a generic name and began to discreetly follow Daniel's social activities through his friends' posts. What I discovered exceeded my most pessimistic expectations. On Wednesday night, while I was signing the sale of his car, Daniel was at a high-end restaurant in River North, celebrating a friend's birthday. The photos showed dishes that easily cost $100 per person, bottles of imported wine, elaborate desserts. In the comments, he himself had written, "Life is too short not to enjoy the good things." On Thursday, he posted a story showing a designer shirt he had just bought. I recognized it immediately. It was a Hugo Boss that cost no less than $200. In the video, he proudly said, "I deserved it after a tough week at the university." On Friday, he appeared in multiple stories from his friends, at an exclusive bar in Wicker Park, drinking premium whiskey and laughing carelessly. One of the images showed him toasting with a glass held high, with a smile that reflected not an ounce of regret for the cruel words he had directed at me just a week before. But the straw that broke the camel's back came on Saturday morning. Daniel posted a photo from a motorcycle dealership showing a Yamaha MT-07 that, as I later researched, cost approximately $8,000. His comment read, "Thinking of trading the car for something more exciting. What do you guys think?" At that moment, I understood that my son had not only completely forgotten our telephone conflict, but he was also considering making significant changes in his life without consulting me, using assets that technically did not belong to him. The disconnect between his behavior and the reality of his academic and economic situation was absolute. That same afternoon, Michael called me with the final notification. "David, everything is ready. The buyers of the apartment want to sign the deed next Tuesday. The car was officially transferred yesterday. I just need your final confirmation to proceed with the eviction notice." "Michael, I want the notice to arrive exactly on Wednesday morning. Make it formal, legal, with no possibility of misunderstanding." "Understood. The notice will state that he has 48 hours to vacate the property because it has been sold by the legal owner. Have you thought about how you're going to handle his reaction?" That question made me think deeply. For the past 10 days, I had been so focused on the technical and legal aspects of my decision that I hadn't fully considered the emotional impact this would have on both of us. However, every time I remembered his words, "I wish you had never been my useless father," and saw his irresponsible posts on social media, my determination grew stronger. "Michael, Daniel is going to react badly. That's inevitable. He's probably going to try to contact me. He's going to yell. He's going to accuse me of cruelty. But I need you to understand something. This is not emotional revenge. It's an educational lesson I should have taught a long time ago. I understand your position, David. I just want to make sure you're prepared for the long-term family consequences. The long-term consequences of not doing this would be much worse. My son has been living in a bubble of privilege financed by me, mocking my trust, wasting educational opportunities, and he capped it all off by insulting me in the most painful way possible. If I don't act now, when will I? On Sunday, I decided to do one last check of the apartment. I had keys because it was technically my property, but I had never used them to respect Daniel's privacy. However, the circumstances had completely changed. I arrived at the building at 10 inches the morning, knowing that Daniel would be sleeping after his usual Saturday night activities. The apartment was exactly as I had imagined. Disorganized, with expensive clothes scattered everywhere, the fridge full of expensive gourmet products, the study desk completely empty of books but full of expensive electronic gadgets. In his room, I found restaurant bills, receipts from exclusive clothing stores, concert tickets, physical evidence of a lifestyle completely disconnected from the reality of a student who had failed 3 classes. In the bathroom, personal care products that cost more than the monthly salary of many workers. As I walked through that apartment that I had bought with so much fatherly love, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. Sadness for the loss of the relationship I thought I had with my son, but liberation in confirming that my decision was absolutely necessary and justified. On Tuesday, Michael sent me a message. "Deed signed. Apartment officially sold. Notification will be delivered tomorrow at 9 a.m. That night, for the first time in 2 weeks, I slept deeply. The next day, my son would discover that words have real consequences, and that the father he had so cruelly disrespected had much more dignity and determination than he had ever imagined. Wednesday, the 18th of October 2024, will be a date I will never forget. At 8:45 inches the morning, while I was peacefully having breakfast on my terrace reading the newspaper, my phone rang. It was Michael. "David, the process server has just arrived at Daniel's building. In 15 minutes at most, he will be knocking on his door with the eviction notice." I felt a strange mixture of nervousness and determination. After 2.5 weeks of meticulous preparation, the final moment had arrived. I poured myself a second cup of coffee and waited. I didn't have to wait long. At 9:47 a.m., my phone started ringing insistently. It was Daniel. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Immediately, it started ringing again, and again, and again. On the 4th try, I decided to answer. "Dad, what the hell is going on?" His voice sounded desperate, almost hysterical. "There's a man at my door telling me I have to vacate the apartment in 48 hours because it was sold. This has to be a mistake." I kept my voice completely calm, almost cold. "It's no mistake, Daniel." "What do you mean it's not a mistake?" "This is my apartment. You told me it was mine. I told you that you could use it while you studied responsibly, but the apartment was always registered in my name, as you well know." There was a long silence. I could hear his agitated breathing on the other end of the line. Dad, I don't understand. Is this about the fight last week? I already apologized. Daniel, you sent me a superficial text message hours after telling me you wished I had never been your father. That's not an apology. That's damage control. But, Dad, I was stressed. I didn't mean it. The words we say when we're stressed are often the most honest, son. They reflect what we really think and feel deep down. I heard background noises, as if he were pacing nervously around the apartment. Dad, please, this is crazy. You can't do this. Where am I going to live? How am I going to get to the university? Daniel, for the past few days I've been looking into your real situation. I know about your dinners in fancy restaurants, your designer clothes, your expensive nights out, your plans to buy an $8,000 motorcycle. I also know that you've been lying to me about your grades for months. Another silence, this one longer and more tense. Have you been spying on me? I've been checking what you were spending the money on, that I sent you monthly for food and studies. Money that comes from my retirement savings and the sale of your deceased mother's car. Dad, I can explain all that. You don't need to explain anything, Daniel. The pictures on social media speak for themselves. The $200 shirt you bought on Thursday speaks for itself. The glasses of premium whiskey from Friday speak for themselves. I could hear sobs on the other end of the line. Dad, please, I know I've made mistakes, but you can't leave me with nothing. I'm your son. Exactly, Daniel. You are my son. And as your father, it's my responsibility to teach you that actions have real consequences. That respect is not optional. That resources are not infinite. But this is too extreme. You can't take everything away from me like this. Extreme? Do you know what's extreme, Daniel? That your father works for 30 years, saves every dollar, sells his deceased wife's car to buy you an apartment, and you tell him you wish he had never been your father. That's extreme. There was a long pause. When he spoke again, his voice had completely changed. He sounded like a scared child. Dad, what happened to my car? The Toyota Corolla was sold last Wednesday to a driver who had been saving for years to buy his own vehicle. You sold my car? He screamed with a desperation I had never heard from him. I sold my car that you were using out of my generosity. You can't do this. I'm going to call a lawyer. Daniel, you can call all the lawyers you want. Both properties were legally registered in my name. I have all the documents, all the purchase invoices, all the bank records. You haven't broken any laws, but neither have I. The call ended abruptly. Daniel had hung up. Over the next 30 minutes, my phone rang 4 more times. I didn't answer any of the calls. Then the text messages started coming in. Dad, please, let's talk. You can't do this to me. I'm your only son. What would Mom think from heaven? I promise I'll change. Please, Dad, don't do this to me. Forgive me, please. I read every message, but I didn't reply to any of them. At 11:30 a.m., I received a call from Michael. David, the process server confirms the order was delivered correctly. Daniel signed the receipt, although he was very upset. Technically, he has until Friday at 9 a.m. to vacate completely. Perfect. Can the new owners take possession immediately after? Yes. The Rodriguez family already has the keys and can move in on Friday afternoon if they wish. At 1:15 p.m., my phone rang again. This time I decided to answer. Dad, I'm standing in front of the university administration building. I just spoke with the academic coordinator. She confirmed that if I don't pay next semester's tuition by October 30th, I lose my spot for good. His voice sounded different, less hysterical, more real. And how much is that tuition, Daniel? $3,800. Interesting. That's exactly the price of the motorcycle you were considering buying last Saturday. Complete silence. Now, do you understand the priorities you've had these past few months, son, Dad? I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything for now, Daniel. You just have to think. Think about the decisions that brought you to this moment. Think about the words you said to me. Think about the respect you lost for your father and for your mother's memory. What am I going to do now? For the first time in 2.5 weeks, I heard genuine vulnerability in his voice. Not manipulation, not hysteria, but real fear and confusion. That, Daniel, is something you'll have to figure out for yourself, just like any 4-year-old who doesn't have a father to insult and financially abuse. I hung up the call and turned off my phone. For the first time since Sarah's death, I felt completely free from the responsibilities I had carried for 3 years. My son would have to face the consequences of his words and actions, and I could finally begin to heal the wounds that he himself had opened in my heart. On Friday morning at 6:30 a.m., I woke up to the insistent ringing of my doorbell. I looked out my bedroom window and saw the Toyota Corolla I had sold. But no, that was impossible. As I focused better, I recognized the figure of Daniel standing at the entrance of my home. He had arrived in a taxi. I wasn't surprised by his presence. For the past 48 hours, he had tried to contact me in every possible way. Calls, messages. He had even sent emails to my personal account. I knew he would eventually show up in person when he realized all other avenues were closed. I dressed slowly, had a deliberately calm breakfast, and only after finishing my coffee did I decide to open the door. It had already been 30 minutes since he arrived, and I could hear him pacing nervously on the front porch. When I opened the door, the visual impact was devastating. My son looked completely different from the confident, carefree young man I had seen in social media photos just a week ago. His eyes were swollen and red. He had clearly been crying. His clothes, usually impeccable and designer, were wrinkled. He was carrying 2 large suitcases and a backpack. "Dad?" was the first thing he said in a broken voice I barely recognized. "Daniel." We stared at each other for a few seconds that felt like an eternity. Then, to my complete surprise, he knelt on the ground of the front porch, letting the suitcases fall to his sides. "Dad, please, forgive me. I'm kneeling before you because I recognize that I was a terrible son. The words I said to you were unforgivable." The image of my 2 4-year-old son kneeling in front of me, crying, stirred complicated emotions within me. Part of me, the instinctive paternal part, wanted to hug him and tell him everything would be okay. But the rational part, the one that had been deeply hurt, reminded me why we were in this situation. "Get up, Daniel. Dignity is not recovered by kneeling." He slowly stood up, wiping his tears with the sleeve of his jacket. "Dad, I know I made terrible mistakes. I know I wasted the money you gave me. I know I lied about my grades. I know the words I said to you were cruel and unjustifiable. But please, give me a chance to make it right. Where did you sleep last night, Daniel?" "At the bus station on the north side. I didn't have money for a hotel." That information hit me harder than I expected. My son, who a week ago was planning to buy an $8,000 motorcycle, had slept at a bus station. "And you work at the electronics store?" "I quit 2 months ago," he admitted, looking down. "I thought I didn't need it because you always sent me money. It was a stupid decision." 2 months ago? That means all the expensive purchases of the last few weeks were made exclusively with the money I sent you. "Yes," he whispered. "That's right. And the friends you went out with to expensive restaurants and exclusive bars? Where are they now that you need help?" I tried to contact several of them. Some didn't answer me. Others told me they couldn't help me financially. Alex, the one I considered my best friend, told me, verbatim, "Bro, I depend on my parents too. I can't take anyone else into my apartment." The reality of his situation was becoming increasingly clear. The friends who enjoyed his generosity when he had money to spend had disappeared the moment he needed support the most. "Daniel, I want you to understand something very important. For 3 years since your mother died, I have sacrificed my comfort, my savings, my retirement plans, everything to make sure you had the best possible opportunities. I know, Dad. I know, and I was ungrateful. Don't interrupt me. I sold Sarah's car, the last tangible memory I had of her, to buy you that apartment. I used money I had saved over decades of honest work to give you a comfortable life, and you not only wasted those opportunities, but you insulted me in the most painful way possible." Tears welled up in his eyes again. "Dad, I didn't mean to say those words. I was frustrated, confused, scared about the classes I had failed. Daniel, the words we speak when we are under pressure are often the most honest. They reflect what we really think in the depths of our hearts. No, Dad, that's not true. You've been the best father anyone could have, especially after Mom died. If you really believed that, you would have never said those words, no matter how frustrated you were." He took another step towards me, his hands outstretched in a pleading gesture. "Dad, please, give me a chance to show you that I can change, that I can be the son you deserve. Daniel, it's too late for promises. For months you lied to me about your grades. For months you squandered my money on unnecessary luxuries, and you topped it all off with words that should never have come out of a son's mouth to his father. What do I have to do for you to forgive me? Work, study better, pay you back the money. Tell me what to do." His desperation was palpable, But I also knew that promises made in moments of crisis are not always kept when the situation normalizes. Daniel, forgiveness is not begged for. It is earned with consistent actions over time, and right now your situation is going to force you to show what you're really made of. Dad, I can't do this alone. I have no money, no job, no place to live. Son, millions of young people your age face these same challenges every day. The difference is that they haven't had a father to solve all their problems for 24 years. So this is it? I'm not your son anymore? That question hit me straight in the heart. Despite all my pain and my determination, Daniel was still my only son, the only family I had left after Sarah's death. Daniel, you will always be my son, but being my son does not give you the right to disrespect me, lie to me, and abuse my generosity. Is there any way we can fix this? I took a deep breath. For the past few weeks, I had considered this possibility, but on my terms, not his. There is only one possibility, Daniel, and it comes with very strict conditions. His eyes lit up with hope. Tell me what they are. I'll accept any condition. First condition, you're going to live in a basic house, in a modest neighborhood, far from the university area. I will pay the rent for 6 months, but you'll have to get a job immediately to cover food, transportation, and personal expenses. I accept. Second condition, no luxuries, no expensive outings, no designer clothes. You're going to learn to live with the essentials. I accept. Third condition, you're going to pass all the classes you owe, with grades above a B. If you fail one more class, all support from me ends. I accept, Dad. And the most important condition, during these 6 months, you are going to prove with actions, not words, that you have truly changed, that you understand the value of respect, effort, and gratitude. I promise I will. Don't promise me anything, Daniel. Just do it. For the first time in 3 weeks, I saw my son smile faintly. Does that mean you're giving me a chance? It means I'm giving you the opportunity to earn a second chance. That same Friday afternoon, Michael and I met to look for housing options that met my specific criteria. I had been very clear about what I needed. Something basic, modest, that would teach Daniel the real value of things without being inhumane. After reviewing several options, we found a small house in a neighborhood on the far south side, about a 40-minute bus ride from the university. It was a simple 2-story structure, living room, kitchen, and bathroom on the first floor, 2 small bedrooms on the second. No frills, but clean and functional. The rent was $800 a month, a fraction of what it cost to maintain the apartment on the north side. Are you sure this is what you want for Daniel? Michael asked me as we reviewed the contract. It's a pretty drastic change compared to the apartment he had. That's exactly the point, Michael. My son needs to understand the difference between privilege and normalcy, between what is earned and what is given. On Saturday morning, I took Daniel to see the house. His reaction was a poem of conflicting emotions. I could see the disappointment in his eyes when he saw the neighborhood, the streets not fully paved, the modest houses, so different from the exclusive area where he had lived for the past 3 years. I'm going to live here? He asked in a voice that mixed disbelief with resignation. You're going to live here if you decide to accept my conditions. If it doesn't seem adequate to you, you can look for your own alternatives with your own resources. We walked through the house in silence. The living room had a basic sofa and a small table. The kitchen was equipped with the bare minimum, a 2-burner stove, a small refrigerator, some basic utensils. The bedrooms each had a single bed, a wooden wardrobe, and a small desk. There's no television, Daniel observed. You don't need one. You need to focus on studying and working. And internet? There's basic internet, enough for university assignments and job searching. After the tour, we sat in the living room to establish the specific rules of our agreement. Daniel, I'm going to be very clear about how this will work. I will pay the rent for this house for exactly 6 months, from November 2024 to April 2025. During that time, you have to get a job and prove that you can cover your basic expenses. What kind of job? Any honest job. Waiter, salesperson, assistant, whatever. The goal is not for you to have a perfect job, but for you to understand what it means to earn money through effort. I took out a notebook and began to write down the specific conditions. First, you will get a job before November 15th. If you don't, the support ends immediately. Second, you will pay the university tuition with your own money earned from working. I will not finance another dollar of your education until you prove that you truly value it. His face turned pale. Dad, the tuition is almost $4,000. It's going to be very difficult to save that amount working basic jobs. Exactly, Daniel. It's going to be difficult. And that difficulty will teach you to value every dollar you spend. It will make you think twice before buying a $200 shirt or dining in expensive restaurants. I continued with the list. Third, no credit cards, no loans, no borrowing money from friends or family. What you spend has to come from what you earn. Fourth, you will send me a weekly report of your expenses, your income, and your university grades. Total transparency. Fifth, no parties, bars, expensive restaurants, designer clothes, or any expense that is not absolutely necessary. And my social life? He asked, with an expression between worried and annoyed. Your social life will consist of studying, working, and maybe some free activity on the weekends. You will get to know the kind of entertainment that most young people your age can actually afford. I handed him the notebook with all the conditions written down. These are the rules, Daniel. They are not negotiable. If you break any of them, my support ends, and you'll have to figure out your situation completely on your own. He read the list twice, with a serious expression. And after the 6 months? What happens if I comply with all of this? If after 6 months you have demonstrated real change, consistent work, good grades, responsible money management, and above all, an attitude of genuine respect and gratitude, then we can talk about rebuilding our father-son relationship. But you're not going to give me back the apartment or the car? Daniel, the apartment and the car no longer exist in your life. They were sold as a consequence of your actions. If in the future, after a long time and a lot of demonstrated change, you decide you want my help to buy a home or a vehicle, it will be a completely new decision, under completely new terms. He was quiet for several minutes, processing all the information. Is there no way to speed up this process? Can't I prove that I've changed more quickly? Daniel, real change doesn't happen in days or weeks. It happens through months of consistent decisions, of facing difficulties, of learning to value the things you once took for granted. And what if I fail? What if I don't get a job in time, or if I fail a class? Then you will have proven that you are not ready to be treated as a responsible adult, and you will have to find your own way in life. The harshness of my words was intentional. I needed him to understand that this was his last real chance, not a game or a negotiation. Can I ask a question? Go ahead. Do you still love me, Dad? That question completely disarmed me. I felt a lump in my throat and took several seconds to answer. Daniel, I love you deeply, but loving a son doesn't mean allowing him to disrespect you, lie to you, and abuse your generosity. Sometimes loving means making difficult decisions to help that person grow. Do you think I can do it? Do you think I can really change? Honestly, I don't know, but I hope so. I hope this experience helps you become the man your mother and I always wanted you to be. We signed the lease that same afternoon. Daniel moved into the house on the south side on Sunday, taking only the clothes he had in his suitcases and some basic university books. When I left him at the door of his new house, we gave each other a brief but meaningful hug. Thanks for giving me this opportunity, Dad. Don't thank me, Daniel. Show me. As I drove back home, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and hope. My son now had the opportunity to show what he was really made of, without the safety net I had provided for his entire life. The next 6 months would reveal whether the painful lessons of the past few weeks had served any purpose, or if I would have to accept that I had lost my son forever. Daniel's first weekly reports arrived punctually every Sunday, as we had agreed. The first report, sent on the 5th of November 2024, was revealing in its brutal simplicity. Dad, week 1. Income, $0. Still looking for a job. Expenses, $47. Transportation, for job hunting. Basic food. Money remaining from my savings, $125. Academic status, course registration pending due to non-payment of tuition. Observations, interviewed at 8 places this week in Chicago. 3 told me they'd let me know, 5 rejected me immediately. I read that first report with mixed feelings. On one hand, it pained me to imagine my son walking the streets of Chicago looking for work, getting rejected, counting every dollar he spent. On the other hand, I knew this experience was exactly what he needed to understand the real value of money and effort. The second report came with better news. Dad, week 2. Income, $0, but I got a job. Expenses, $52. Transportation, food, bought work clothes at a thrift store. Money remaining, $73. Academic status, still no tuition paid. Observations. I was hired at a major grocery store as a stocker. I start on Monday. Hours, Monday to Saturday from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Salary, $1,200 a month. When I read thrift store, I felt a pang in my chest. My son, who a month ago was buying $200 shirts, was now looking for second-hand clothes to go to work. But I also felt something akin to pride. He had gotten a job on his own merit. The third report marked a significant change in his tone. Dad, week 3. Income, $300, first week of work. Expenses, $168. Food, subway transportation. Basic house utilities. Accumulated savings, $205. Academic status. I spoke with the coordinator. I can register for classes until December 15th if I pay the tuition. Observations. The work is very physically demanding, carrying boxes for 8 hours a day in the warehouse. But my coworkers are good people and have taught me a lot. For the first time, I understand what it means to earn money with real physical effort. That last sentence struck me deeply. It was the first time Daniel showed a genuine understanding of something I had tried to teach him for years. The following weeks brought a constant evolution in his reports. By mid-November, he had established a strict routine, waking up at 5:30 a.m., having a quick breakfast, taking the subway from the south side to downtown Chicago, working 9 hours, including a break, returning home at 6 p.m., studying until 10:00 p.m., and sleeping. His fourth report included a detail that surprised me. Observations. I stopped buying lunch at the supermarket, $15 daily, and started bringing homemade food from home. I saved $90 a week this way. I also discovered that walking an extra 15 minutes allows me to take a cheaper bus and save $3 daily on transportation. My son was learning to optimize expenses, something he had never needed to do in his previous life. At the end of November, I received an unexpected call from him. It was the first time we had spoken on the phone since the day he moved to the outskirts of Chicago. Dad, can I ask you something? Of course, Daniel. How did you manage to maintain our house, pay for my studies, buy food, and still save money when I was little? The question moved me, because it showed that he was finally understanding the complexity of managing a family's finances. I worked a lot of overtime, made very detailed budgets, and sacrificed my personal tastes to make sure you and your mother had what you needed. I had no idea it was so difficult. I thought the money just appeared. Money never just appears, son. It's earned with effort, managed with care, and spent with responsibility. Dad, I want to apologize, but not the superficial apology I gave you 2 months ago. A real apology. Now I understand what every dollar you sent me monthly meant. I understand what it cost to buy that apartment and that car. And I understand how hurtful my words were. For the first time in months, I heard genuine sincerity in his voice. Daniel, I appreciate your words, but more than apologies, I'm interested in seeing sustained changes over time. I know, and I'm doing it. Tomorrow I'm paying the university tuition. I've saved $3,800 working at the grocery store. That news filled me with a mixture of pride and relief. My son had managed to save the money for his tuition by working honestly. In December, his reports began to include academic information in addition to financial data. Partial grades. Financial Mathematics 8.2, Strategic Management 8, International Marketing 8.3, Final Project 8.1. His grades were excellent, better than they had been in previous years when I financed everything and he had no additional responsibilities. How do you manage to study after working 9 hours a day? I asked him during one of our weekly calls. I discovered that when time is limited, you concentrate better. Before, I had the whole day free and wasted it. Now I have 3 hours to study each night, so every minute counts. By January 2025, Daniel had developed a discipline I had never seen in him. His reports showed a structured life, work, study, rest, in balanced proportions. He had increased his monthly savings and had begun to plan his expenses months in advance, but the most notable transformation came in his report from the 3rd week of January. Dad, I've been reflecting a lot on our conversation from last year. I believe the words I said to you were not only cruel but reflected an immature and ungrateful mentality I had developed. During these months, I've met coworkers who support entire families on salaries lower than mine, and I've understood the enormous privilege it was to have a father willing to sacrifice for my future. I not only want to apologize for my words, but thank you for making the difficult decision to teach me these lessons. When I finished reading that report, I felt for the first time in months that maybe I had gotten my son back. On the 15th of February 2025, I received a call I will never forget. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I was in my study reviewing some documents when my phone rang. Seeing Daniel's name on the screen, I felt the usual mix of expectation and caution that had characterized our communications over these months. "Dad, do you have a few minutes? I have some important news to share with you." His voice sounded different. It wasn't the desperation of October, nor the uncertainty of November. There was something solid, mature in his tone. "Of course, Daniel. I'm listening. First, the semester grades. I finished with an average of 8.4 out of 10. I passed all the classes I owed, including the 3 I had previously failed. My academic coordinator congratulated me because it was the best academic performance I've had in my entire degree. I felt a pang of pride in my chest. It was the first time in years that Daniel had given me genuinely positive academic news. "That's excellent news, son. But that's not all. At the grocery store, they offered me a position as a shift supervisor. It means a salary increase to $1,450 a month, and the opportunity to learn personnel management skills. And are you going to accept?" I already accepted. "Dad, for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm building something for myself. Not just surviving, but actually progressing." The conversation continued for almost an hour. Daniel told me details about his daily routine, about the lessons he had learned working with people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, about how his perspective on money and effort had changed. "Dad, there's something else I want to tell you. Yesterday I was walking down Michigan Avenue after work and passed by that Hugo Boss store where I used to buy shirts. I stood in front of the window, looking at a shirt similar to the one I bought in October, the $200 one. And I did the math in my head. That shirt is equivalent to 27 hours of work at my current salary. Before, when you sent me money, I didn't make that connection. To me, it was just available money. Now I understand that every dollar represents lifetime, physical effort, dedication." His words moved me deeply. My son was finally understanding concepts I had tried to teach him for years. "Daniel, what you're telling me fills me with hope. Dad, I want to do something formal. I want to write you a letter, not a quick email or a WhatsApp message. A handwritten letter, like the ones you taught me to write when I was little to thank for Christmas presents." A week later, I received that letter. It was a thick envelope, with my name written in the careful handwriting I recognized from his childhood. The content of that letter completely changed my perception of my son's progress. "Dear Dad, during these 4 months living on a limited budget, working physically, and studying without the financial safety net you provided me for years, I have had a lot of time to reflect on our relationship and the type of person I had become. First, I want to publicly acknowledge what I have already told you over the phone. The words I directed at you in September were unforgivable. Not only were they cruel at the moment, but they reflected a mentality of entitlement and ungratefulness that I had gradually developed without realizing it. Second, I want to thank you for making the most difficult decision a father can make, disciplining his adult son with real consequences. I know that selling the apartment and the car was not a decision made out of revenge, but out of love. A love strong enough to prioritize my personal growth over my immediate comfort. Third, I want to document some of the specific changes I have experienced. I now understand the real value of money. Every dollar I earn represents 4 minutes and 8 seconds of my work time. I have learned to cook, clean, manage a household, and budget expenses monthly. My university grades have improved significantly because I value each class as a direct investment of my hard-earned money. I have developed a work ethic I never had before, and my supervisors have recognized it with promotions. I have learned to find entertainment and satisfaction in free or low-cost activities. But more important than all these practical changes, I have experienced a fundamental change in mindset. I have gone from seeing myself as someone to whom the world owes things, to seeing myself as someone who must earn his place in the world through effort and contribution. Dad, I am not asking you to go back to the previous dynamic. I don't want you to buy me another apartment or another car. What I want is the opportunity to rebuild our father-son relationship on new, healthier foundations. I want you to know that I plan to continue working and studying until I graduate in December. Afterward, I will look for a job in my professional field, but always maintaining the humility and work ethic I have developed during these months. If you are willing, I would like us to consider the possibility of having dinner together one Sunday, as we used to when Mom was still alive. Not to ask you for anything, but to share quality time as father and son. I love you, and I hope one day I can be a source of pride for you again. Your son, Daniel. When I finished reading that letter, I cried for the first time since Sarah's funeral. But they weren't tears of sadness, but of relief and hope. That same afternoon, I wrote him a brief reply. Daniel, your letter has moved me deeply. I accept your invitation to dinner next Sunday. With love, Dad. The following Sunday, Daniel arrived at my house at 6 p.m. He brought a modest bottle of wine he had bought with his salary, and flowers from the local market to put on his mother's grave after dinner. During that dinner, for the first time in years, I had a genuine and mature conversation with my adult son. That first Sunday dinner on the 23rd of February 2025 marked the beginning of a new stage in our father-son relationship. Daniel arrived exactly on time, something that for years had been a constant problem in his previous life. He was wearing simple but clean clothes, and for the first time in a long time, I could see in his eyes the clarity of someone who sleeps well because he has worked honestly. Dad, before we start dinner, I want to show you something, he said, taking a small notebook out of his pocket. I've been keeping a detailed record of my expenses and income for these 5 months. He opened the notebook and showed me pages filled with meticulous notes. Every dollar earned, every dollar spent, every dollar saved. It was the kind of financial discipline I had tried to teach him for years without success. Look at these numbers, Dad. In October, when I moved into the house, I had $125 in total. Today, I have $2,340 saved. It's not a fortune, but it's money I've earned completely by myself. I reviewed the pages carefully. His calculations were precise. His expense categories were well organized, and I could see the month-by-month evolution of a person who had learned to live within his means. Daniel, this is impressive. What do you plan to do with these savings? I have 3 specific goals. First, I want to have an emergency fund of at least $3,000 before I graduate. Second, I want to buy my own computer to look for a professional job when I finish my degree. Third, I want to save up to give you something meaningful for your birthday in December. That last part surprised me. You don't need to give me anything, son. Dad, for 24 years you gave me everything without me giving you anything in return, not even basic respect at the end. I want to experience the satisfaction of giving you something I've bought with my own effort. During dinner, Daniel told me stories from his work that revealed a maturity I didn't know he had. He told me about immigrant co-workers who worked double shifts to send money to their families, about single mothers who studied at night after working all day, about young people his age who combined work and studies without the luxury of having parents to support them financially. One of my co-workers, Linda, is 26 and supports her 2 young children alone. She works at the grocery store during the day and cleans offices 3 nights a week. She never complains, never arrives late, always has a smile. When I see her, I think about how privileged I was without even knowing it. And how has university life treated you during these months? Completely different, Dad. Before, I went to classes as if it were an optional entertainment. Now, every class costs me real money that I've earned working. I take detailed notes, do all the readings, participate actively. My professors have noticed the change. And your friends from before? Daniel paused for a long time before answering. That was one of the hardest lessons, Dad. When I stopped having money to go out to expensive restaurants and exclusive bars, most of them just drifted away. I discovered that many of those friendships were actually transactional. They sought me out because I paid the bills, because I had a car to take them places, because my apartment was convenient for their gatherings. Did that hurt you? At first, yes, but then I realized it was better to know the truth. Now I have fewer friends, but they're real. Co-workers who invite me to their homes for simple dinners, university classmates who study with me in the library because they don't have money for other entertainment either. After dinner, he fulfilled his promise to take flowers to Sarah's grave. We walked through the cemetery together, and when we reached his mother's headstone, Daniel knelt and spoke in a low voice. Mom, I know that from wherever you are, you've seen everything that happened. I want to apologize for disrespecting Dad the way I did. He has been the father you and I always wanted him to be, and I was too immature to appreciate it. I promise that from now on, I will honor your memory by being the son you both deserved. Hearing those words next to Sarah's grave was one of the most emotional moments of my life. In the following weeks, we established a routine of Sunday dinners. Each meeting confirmed that the change in Daniel was genuine and lasting. It wasn't a temporary act to win back my favors, but a deep personal transformation. At the end of March, he brought me unexpected news. Dad, my boss at the grocery store, offered me a company scholarship to do a master's degree in business management. They would cover the full cost of tuition if I commit to working with them for 2 years after graduating. And what are you going to do? I'm going to accept. It's an incredible opportunity, and it also means I can develop my professional career without depending on you financially. In April, when exactly 6 months had passed since he moved into the house on the outskirts, Daniel asked me for a special meeting. Dad, I want to propose something to you. I know the 6 months we agreed upon are up this month. I want to continue paying the rent for the house myself. I don't want to go back to a dynamic where you cover my basic expenses. Are you sure? With your new supervisor salary, you could move to a more comfortable place if I help you. I'm completely sure. That house has taught me to value the essentials. Besides, I want to prove to myself that I can be completely independent. In May, Daniel graduated with honors from his business administration degree. It was the proudest day I had experienced as a father since my son's birth. During the ceremony, when I saw him walk across the stage to receive his diploma, I remembered the cruel words he had said to me 8 months ago. I wish you had never been my useless father. After the graduation, Daniel approached me with his diploma in hand. Dad, I want to dedicate this achievement to you. Without the tough lesson you gave me, I would have never found the discipline and determination necessary to get here. Daniel, this achievement is entirely yours. You earned it with your effort, your work, your dedication. Yes, but you taught me that real achievements only come through genuine effort. That was the most valuable lesson of my life. Today, as I write this story, 8 months have passed since that painful call in September. My son works as a supervisor at a grocery store, studies for his master's degree at night, pays his own expenses, and has developed a relationship with me based on mutual respect and genuine affection. I haven't gotten back the son I had before, because that irresponsible and ungrateful young man no longer exists. In his place, I have a relationship with a mature man who understands the value of effort, who appreciates family sacrifices, and who has learned that words have real consequences. Sometimes, the most important lessons in life require painful decisions. But when a father's love is strong enough, even the most difficult decisions can lead to the most beautiful endings. If you liked this story, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box to the left. Thanks for watching.